So yeah, basically what I wanted to do was just kind of chat about about your journey from grassroots as a youth player through into academy, youth team, and then into professional. Obviously, we've got a couple of coaches on. We've got a lot of younger goalkeepers on, a few older goalkeepers as well. So obviously, I'm sure the insight will be brilliant for them.
No
so
problem.
we're good to start.
Yeah, that's fine.
Brilliant, spot on, mate. So just obviously going straight right back to the beginning, kind of like what age did you get into playing football and where did you start?
Yeah, so pretty much as early as I can remember, really, from like 5, 6-year-old, went to West Denton Boys Club with my dad. I think obviously I must have been on at him to join a team or whatever, because I was always playing football just from a really early age. So that's one of my earliest memories, really, is going with him to West Denton. I think they didn't start till maybe like under 7s, under 8s. So I'm pretty sure I was like maybe one of the youngest there in the sort of let us join in. So really young age, and it just sort of took off from there, really.
So were you always a goalkeeper? Is that what you've always wanted to be?
Yeah, pretty much. I think from that age, I enjoyed playing outfield as well. But my dad was a goalkeeper, not at a particularly high level. I think he played for like the county and for like pub teams, things like that back then. So I think just from that, maybe he's wanting to sort of copy him. I always sort of played in goal as well. So I played outfield, played in goal, and think probably took to playing in goal slightly more and done well, and then and got picked up by Newcastle at 8-year-old. So once that sort of happened, the decision was sort of made for me to sort of stick to it. But I was always obviously better in goal, but I did stick to playing outfield, and I think that's important as well. I enjoyed it. So a bit of both, but obviously mainly in goal.
So was it kind of 8-year-old it was Newcastle and that was it, or did they still allow you access to your grassroots team as well and allowed you that freedom to stay away from that?
So Newcastle came in, so I played like a couple of years for West Denton at like 7, 8-year-old, and yeah, so I think Newcastle started at under 9s. Did a 6-week trial for the academy at the start of the under 9 season. I think my first game was Liverpool, and remember that I think there was 2 or 3 of us on trial, because obviously the under 9s was the first age group, so there was no goalkeeper signed on, and luckily I was the one that got chosen. So it was just me for a long time actually in my age group. So a lot of good experiences playing for Newcastle, and then obviously I was allowed to play for the school, and I did a lot of stuff with my dad as well on like a Sunday morning and things like that. So kept on with stuff outside of Newcastle, but obviously it was 2-3 times a week on a night time after school with Newcastle from 8 to 16, really.
So was your dad kind of your first goalkeeper coach, I take it?
Yeah, pretty much. So he was involved with the stuff at West Denton as well. So he helped out with them. So obviously when I left West Denton, he sort of left that as well, and we just used to go out on a Saturday morning and do the basics, really, like lots of handling, kicking, bit of crossing, like things like that, all the way through, to be honest. Even in lockdown a few months ago, he said I think he was itching to get back out with us as well. So we did a little bit even a few months ago. So, but yeah, as a kid, I did a lot with him on a weekend to like supplement obviously the goalkeeping coaching I was getting at Newcastle, and I would do 1 night a week team training as well. So it'd be like 2 nights a week goalkeeping, sometimes 2 nights a week with the team, and then a Saturday morning with my dad, and then obviously games on a Sunday. So I've actually thought about quite a lot looking back. It was a lot of football, and it was obviously a lot of hard work, but obviously really enjoyable as well.
Brilliant. So obviously at the academy, 7, 8, yeah? How did you find that experience of being in the academy and around that setup?
Yeah, I loved it. Like I say, like looking back, it was a lot of commitment looking back. But I think as a kid, you've got so much energy. I love training. Obviously, I'm sure all your young goalies of all ages, like they enjoy it. That's why they do it. And that was the same for me. At that age, obviously, you don't play football to make a living or to have a job. You just first and foremost you play to enjoy it. So I loved it. You know, barely missed a night's training. But it was quite difficult as well. I think obviously you'd finish school at 3, half 3, and then you'd be quick something to eat and you'd be leaving the house at like 5 o'clock to go training at Newcastle, like I say, 3 or 4 times a week. So it was and then you would travel for games at a weekend, like all over the country really. So but I absolutely loved it. Like it was a fantastic experience training obviously with the better players of your age group at the time in Newcastle, and like I say, playing against all the different teams. I loved it, and you know, it obviously set me up to go on to have a career in football. So it was really enjoyable.
So what would you say like kind of like your key takeaways were from the academy? Obviously, there's a massive commitment there. What do you think it taught you, and how do you think it helped you grow into obviously becoming a professional footballer and obviously making it a career?
I think obviously what it gave you a platform to play and train and practice 2, 3 times a week. Obviously, you know, speaking to a lot of young goalkeepers as I grew up, the main thing I would always say is just practice as much as you can. And obviously with lockdown and things like that, that has become obviously more difficult. I think Newcastle gave you that opportunity and made it easy for me to, you know, go to the great facilities that they had at the time, um, with obviously really good coaching, and to learn the basics, like the technique of being a goalkeeper, and that's your platform. That what I say to a young goalkeeper is obviously the basic techniques never change. So from when you're 8, 9 year old and you're catching your first ball, that'll obviously never change. Is what I do now every day is basically the same sort of stuff. Like it's pretty simple being a goalkeeper. You know, the ball's coming towards the ball and you're trying to keep it out the net, and obviously people might make it a bit more, you know, not as simple as that, but that's what it remains really. So I think it just gave us a platform and a foundation to practice as much as I could, to play with obviously the better players in my age, and to have that basic technique, which obviously stood us in a good stead.
Brilliant. So obviously towards the end of your time in the academy, come 16, you were told unfortunately you weren't being taken forward
Yeah,
into YTS.
yeah.
So kind of how did you take that, and were you really expecting that to come at the time?
I think towards the end of my time at Newcastle, the first time round, I think I did probably sort of think it was a good chance of happening. I think I was always quite highly rated as a young goalkeeper, and then obviously different things sort of come into play as you get a bit older in terms of physicality. I wasn't the tallest lad at the time. I didn't grow at an early age. I was a bit of a late developer, so you know, I struggled a little bit with that side of things. So when I got to 13, 14, I struggled with my strength and my kicking and things like that. I knew I was a bit behind the other lads. So my goalkeeping side was always pretty good, but I knew I was struggling physically. Obviously, I would speak to my dad about it, and I think we both hoped that Newcastle would look past that at that age, because obviously at 15, 16, you've obviously still got 3 or 4 years of growing. So that was a big part of it. So yeah, I was really disappointed. I got in the car afterwards, and I'll always remember obviously driving away from the training ground. There was obviously tears and things like that, because obviously it'd been a big part of my life. But I think it just goes to show that obviously setbacks are probably happen to everyone, and in some ways it was a good thing for me, because I went to obviously where I came across yourself. I went to Carlisle, and they give me a different path. That's obviously brought me now back to Newcastle. So it was obviously really disappointing. I'm sure all the young goalies on this chat have already have disappointments, whether it's not playing in the team, or losing, making mistakes, and maybe it's like having to change teams, or whatever it may be. So it was just and obviously it was a pretty big one for me at the time, but I did take it pretty bad, but I always also had a lot of determination to carry on and try and make a career.
So you said kind of like 13, 14, you had an idea that physicality might come into play. Were you kind of preparing for that? Were you making contact with other clubs, or were you fully set on signing as a youth at Newcastle?
Yeah, so I think luckily my dad obviously knew what was sort of going on, and he was saying to me, you know, the way it was going, he knew there was a chance of that happening. So there was coaches that I stayed in touch with that had obviously moved on from Newcastle, and there was one in particular that always stayed in touch with me, and that obviously rated me quite highly. And he always said if Newcastle never worked out, he would have contacts to help. So I was fortunate that I didn't have to go to exit trials or anything like that. I had Carlisle was pretty much the first choice because of location. It was only an hour away from home, and he knew the youth team coach at Carlisle, so he said I could get you in for a trial pretty quickly. So that was the first port of call, really. So we did have a backup plan. Obviously there was exit trials, and there was, I think, a few other clubs from memory, I think York and maybe's Hartlepool and places like that, where we would maybe have tried if Carlisle didn't work. But fortunately enough, I went to Carlisle in the March. I got told I went to Carlisle a couple of weeks later, and they offered me a YTS straight away. So I was lucky that I had something to bounce back at. So like I say, it was something that we sort of prepared for. But that obviously didn't make it any easier at the time. You can imagine at that age going into school and things like that, having been released from Newcastle, these are all the different things that obviously I had to deal with at the time, which wasn't easy. But obviously, Carlisle picked me up.
Yeah, obviously you spent your 2 years there, signed pro, and then it wasn't long after you made your debut.
Yeah.
Late appearance, wasn't it, against Norwich?
Yeah, so I signed there at 16, so moved away from home, so it's about an hour away from home. So there was about 14, 15 of us lived in a B&B. So it was great for me to like grow up basically at that age. And we trained every day. We still did 1 day a week of college for obviously the fact that still are not that many people will actually go on and have a career in football even at that age. So we still did that. And then I had quite a successful youth team, 2 years in the youth team. But even then I didn't play my first year in the youth team because there was 2 goalkeepers. So a lot of the other lads might share games, or girls, sorry, will share games with other girls or other boys in their team. And I obviously had to do that at 17. Didn't play many games in my first year, and that's something that you have to learn as a goalkeeper. Only one person can play, so sometimes you have to be patient and just still work hard in training and things like that, which is what I had to do in my first year at Carlisle. And then within 12 months, I'd gone from not playing for the youth team to coming on. I don't know if this has gone off, has it?
No, you're still there, mate.
I'm still there. Sorry, it's gone off on my.
Yeah.
I'll just try and find it on my. I don't know where it's gone. 1 second. It's gone off on my laptop. I'll just carry on if I'm still on.
Yeah, we've still got you, mate. I'll let you know if anything changes.
No problem. Yeah, so just sorry, from 12 months not playing the youth team, they obviously coming on at Norwich, and there was about 26,000 there in the stadium, and standing on the sideline coming on was obviously pretty nerve-wracking, but came on, made my debut, and just went from strength to strength from there, really, and ended up getting in the first team and playing in the first team at quite a young age. So it was pretty much how I could have planned it. Worked out with Carlisle pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, you spent what, 5 years as a pro?
Yeah, as a pro, I think it was 9 years altogether. So I think I went at obviously 16, and I didn't leave until I was 24. So I think no, so yeah, it was been 2 years as a YT and 7 years, 7 years as a pro. So 5 years in the team, pretty much. Obviously, because of injuries and things like that, not 5 sort of full seasons, and there was ups and downs at Carlisle as well, because of that's what happens in football with injuries and things like that. But overall, it was a really, really good club for me, and really enjoyed it.
Obviously, during your time there as well, I think your first year you had Adam Collin and Lenny Pidgley.
Yeah.
Obviously, two really experienced goalkeepers, and then you went through with Adam until about, was it 2014, 2015? What was it like having kind of like that experience and working alongside them day in, day out?
Yeah, great. So pretty much, obviously that transition from 18 to the first team is obviously huge. You're going from still youth football to obviously training with first team players, and obviously you play a match on a weekend, and obviously it's for 3 points in front of fans and things like that. So it was obviously a big step up, and it was great just to see how they trained, just how obviously took seriously everyone took it. You couldn't just turn up one day and didn't really fancy it, or you couldn't be bothered. Like that wasn't acceptable once you get to a professional level. And other goalkeepers that sort of were in the youth team, there was a few that had the ability but didn't have the attitude, and some days they didn't really fancy it, and they quickly got found out. So it was pretty much about the attitude and the dedication to make sure you train hard every day, because that's what's required once you become a professional. But they were great with me. They helped me out, and even though once I got in the team, Adam was always really supportive. And I think as goalkeepers and the goalkeeper union and things like that, they all work together, and it was really good for me to learn off them, and they obviously both were good for me long term.
I suppose you had the benefit of Tony Craig and Simon Tracy as well. Obviously, both played at a very high level. You would have them as coaches at the time as well, wouldn't you? I know Simon was there when I was there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think coaches, are massive. I think a goalkeeper coach for a goalkeeper is a huge relationship, because obviously outfield players, they might just have the manager, there might be an assistant manager, but they've got sort of 16, 17 players to deal with, whereas a goalkeeping coach generally has 2 or 3, and you become quite close. And Tony Craig obviously helped me massively, and I think that's why it's important for goalkeepers to have a good attitude and things like that, because the goalkeeping coach is really important for you. And if you give him, the dedication or the work rate, then they'll obviously respect you more and look after you more and have your best interests. So Tony was great for me, obviously got me in the team, and then Simon came in, and sometimes it's good to have like a different voice and a different opinion, and I work with him like in different ways, watching my games back and watching clips of my games and things like that. So he helped me with things like that, and they're both obviously good for me in terms of becoming a better goalkeeper.
Brilliant. So kind of like it came to a point where you decided to leave, and you took that step up into League One with Walsall. I think they went up through the playoffs, didn't they? They beat Carlisle in the playoff semi-final. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that was a few years before. I don't think it was a season before. Yeah, it was a few years before that they'd been promoted. Yeah.
So how easy was that decision to make, to take a step up to leave Carlisle after you've been there for 9 years?
Difficult. I think football is really, it's hard to describe how insecure it is at times. I think especially at that sort of League One, League Two level. I think obviously the boys and girls here, they'll probably have an idea of professional football as like loads of money and easy and fame and all these things, and that's obviously only the very, very top level. I think below that, if you want to have a career in like League One, League Two, or like the conference place like that, can be really difficult in terms of even moving from different areas of the country, not knowing if you've got a contract from one year to the next. So my contract was running out at Carlisle. I'd had quite a few injuries and stuff like that. So they had offered me a contract, but obviously you get one career, and I just tried to play at the highest level I could. And we didn't get promoted in my last season. We lost the playoff semi-final in my last game. So I decided I wanted to speak to other clubs, and the goalkeeping coach at Walsall had a really good reputation. He's now at Aston Villa.
Neil Cutler.
Yeah, Cutler, and
fantastic.
Yeah, so I spoke to him in a lot of detail, and it was mainly him really to work with someone else, someone with a very good reputation, and to improve and things like that. So that's why I took the decision to leave Carlisle. Probably looking back, it would have been very easy for me to stay at Carlisle, close to home, being there for a long time. But I took the decision to sort of leave and step out of my comfort zone and try a new club, and that's what took me to Walsall, which is in Birmingham. For the guys that don't know.
So obviously, yeah, later you took another jump, and you went up to Motherwell to play in the Scottish Premier League. Got to end up with a really good reputation up there. With 4 penalty saves as well. So I think you got a reputation for saving penalties as well, didn't you?
Yeah, so Walsall didn't really work out. I played like half the season. The manager and the goalie coach ended up moving on. The lad that come in just happened to like do really well, especially in his first few games. And like that's what I was saying about being a goalkeeper. Sometimes it's totally out of your control, things that happen. I think obviously a lot of the young goalies here will probably be Newcastle fans, and it's the same at the moment in Newcastle. Obviously, Dubravka got injured. He was player of the year the last few years. Carl Darlow's come in and been really good, being one of our best players. So through no fault of Martin's whatsoever, he finds himself on the bench, and it was sort of a similar situation. I'd done okay at Walsall. The lad played in the cup and done really well. We weren't going through a good time as a team, so it was one of them where the manager decided just to change it, and he was outstanding. So I decided to move to Motherwell, and like you say, sort of the opposite happened. The goalkeeper there got ill with quite a serious illness, and I managed to play. And like I say, I saved a penalty against Celtic quite early on. We got a few good results, and it went from there. And I ended up having a really good 18 months there playing in the team. It was fantastic to play against teams like Celtic and Rangers, like 50,000 fans at the stadiums, bit like St James's Park, playing there every few weeks. And Scotland was really good for me, and again developed me as a goalkeeper that played out from the back, different things like that. It was meant I could improve different parts of my game, and obviously eventually led to me getting my move back to Newcastle.
So obviously the season before you moved to Newcastle, Motherwell had qualified for the Europa League.
Yeah.
Was there an option for you to stay on and potentially play European football, or was it pretty much set that when Newcastle came in, you were gone and you wanted to take that opportunity?
It was difficult, and again, like looking at football, you have to make difficult decisions at times. And Motherwell offered me a contract way earlier, like the year before. So I still had over a year left on my contract. I think it was one of the last games of the season, and the coach said, "Look, we're going to offer you a new deal." So I had no idea that Newcastle was even possible at this point. But again, just my character about wanting to push myself and things like that, I thought I would just wait. I think sometimes you've got to have confidence in your own ability, and I knew I'd been doing well. I knew that obviously Motherwell wanted me to stay, but the lad that had got ill was also a very good goalie, and he was back fit. So I had to basically gamble that I was going to play well that season and still have an option of getting a good move. Like I could have signed a new deal the previous summer. I didn't. Turned out we done really well. I done well. Motherwell done well, and obviously, like you say, we ended up being third. And it wasn't until around November, December that I spoke to a few teams, and obviously Newcastle being one of them, who said there was a chance I might be able to sign for them that summer. And that's when Motherwell gave me sort of a now or never in the January to sign. And I said, obviously with the chance of going to Newcastle and things like that, I just couldn't turn that down. So I just sort of said no. They signed the other lads. So again, I was sort of gambling that I would have Newcastle at the end of the season. Obviously, that's what happened. So it worked out in the end. But if Motherwell had a bad season, or if I'd had a bad season in my last year at Newcastle, at Motherwell, it could have been very different.
Yeah. So obviously, signed for Newcastle. Whatever's happened with kind of like coronavirus and the pandemic and the start of the season being delayed, but you finally, obviously all those years later, got to have your debut with St James's Park. How was that?
Yeah, it was unbelievable, to be honest. So when I signed, I pretty much signed knowing that there was a chance I would never play again. Obviously coming in as a number 3, like we've touched on about goalkeepers, only one can play. I knew I was taking a massive step up, so I would be a number 3, and obviously I had 2 great goalkeepers ahead of me. But just so it happened, Martin got injured first day of pre-season. He hurt his foot, so it was me and Carl. And then I done well in training. I knew I'd done well in training pretty much since I come in, and the manager decided to give me a game in the cup at home to Blackburn. So it was a massive day for me. The only disappointing thing was that there was nobody there really. But that's the world we're in at the moment. But walking out St James's Park, obviously looking at where I used to sit, and the local hero before the game, and all these little things like that meant a lot to me. And obviously we won the game 1-0, played really well. So it was brilliant feeling to obviously to play for Newcastle, something that I dreamed of since I was 4-year-old, 5-year-old. So something that I probably never thought would actually happen, especially the ups and downs I've had along the way. But definitely something that I can say that I've achieved one of my main goals in my career. And played 2 more games as well in the cup after that, away from home. And to be honest, this season's gone as pretty much as well as I could have hoped for, considering, like I say, when I came in, I wasn't sure if I'd play, and I've really enjoyed it.
Brilliant. I'm sure obviously he'll get some more opportunities going forwards as well for another 2.5 years.
Yeah. So like I say, I think in football you just never know. I think that's the main thing you mentioned there, opportunities. I think if you get opportunities in football and in life, really, if opportunities come your way, you've got a chance to take them and to do well, and then you move forward from there. So it's just a case of, like I've touched on before, practicing, working as hard as you can, doing things behind the scenes where nobody's really watching. And then when you do get opportunities presented to you, hopefully you've got all the basis and fundamentals behind you that you can obviously do well when it comes your way. So like I say, it's just a case of keep working hard, keep training. Even at my age now, keep improving, and seeing where it takes you.
Brilliant. I think you've kind of just answered my last one there. So I was going to ask you kind of like what you've learned from your journey, and what advice would you give to the goalkeepers who've got aspirations of playing professional. But I think you've kind of summed it up there. You've got to work hard and take opportunities when they come your way.
Definitely. I think that's like the absolute number one for me, is that when you go to training, your goalkeeping training, to work as hard as you can. Obviously enjoy it, but it might be rain, it might be cold. You might have had a rubbish day at school, or your girlfriend might not be speaking to you, or things like that. But I think when you get to training, just it's something that you can put one thing aside and just work as hard as you can. And that's something that I had drilled into me as a youngster. Like, what's the point in doing something if you're not going to give it your best? And like that's how I try and do every day. Obviously, at the moment, I'm not playing on a Saturday. I'm not obviously on the bench, but every day that I go into training, I still try and do my best, because you just never know when an opportunity will come. And I think, as a youngster, for all the youngsters listening, I think if you're going to be a goalkeeper and play for a team, obviously you would want to do the best you can for your team. You'd want to do the best you can for yourself. So I think it's just a case of working as hard as you can. And I find, if you work hard at something, you'll enjoy it even more, and you'll get better. And who knows where it could take you? Who knows who's going to be watching your games and things like that. You just never know.
Great advice. So that's me done, mate. Obviously, I really appreciate the time, appreciate the chat. Being open, honest, insightful. If we've got time, if it's all right with you,
go for it.
Could we take a couple of questions from a couple of the keepers watching?
Yeah, that's no problem. Yeah.
Is that all right? Does anybody have a question? If you can, just unmute your microphone, and I'll come to you. There we go, Jack. First one up, very quick.
What was your favourite club that you played at?
I think that's an easy one. I think Newcastle for because I supported them as well. So I used to go to all the games, went to away games, home games, had all the shirts as a kid. So I think Carlisle was obviously great for me. They're all good for me in different ways. Carlisle for giving me a chance as a pro. Walsall obviously took me on and gave me a new experience. And Motherwell obviously was we did really well and probably was the best team I played for in terms of when I was playing, because we came third and things like that. But obviously Newcastle by far is obviously the club that I've always supported. So definitely Newcastle.
Anyone else? Josh.
Why did you want to play in goal?
That's a good one. I think, like I said, I did enjoy playing outfield, but I think maybe it's because my dad played in goal, but it was just something I enjoyed about diving around and making a save. Just felt really good, like almost stopping people from scoring. It just like motivated me just to try and, I don't know, it's a funny one. I obviously just enjoyed it and just enjoyed the position, diving around, like I say, making saves, and obviously I was quite good so at a young age, so I just sort of carried on from there. But I do enjoy playing outfield as well. I used to play striker for my school, and I do enjoy score a few goals as well, but them days are long gone.
Anyone else? Hayden, I know you had a question. Do you still want to ask it? No, he's shaking his head. Go on, Adrian. And then Joe, come to you after.
Challenge you had in your career, like just anything that happened which like made you demotivate in football?
Biggest challenge, probably suppose challenge was when I left Walsall and I hadn't been playing, and then I went to Motherwell, and the goalkeeper who was at Motherwell was meant to have got a move, so he was going to go to a championship club, and his move fell through. So basically I'd gone to Motherwell as a number one, but he didn't go, so basically it was up to me to sort of try and get in the team, which obviously I ended up doing, and then staying in the team. So that was a big challenge. And probably now as well, like obviously I've been a number one goalkeeper where you're playing every week, but now obviously I'm a number three. So I suppose it's a challenge for me to sort of like just work as hard as I can when you don't have a game at the weekend. So I would say that. And obviously the big one was like when I got released at Newcastle was to recover from that and to stay motivated to go somewhere else and obviously have a career. So there's lots of challenges that come when you're obviously in football. So there's plenty of different challenges at different stages of my career. So that's what I would say with that one.
Joe?
Do you think goalkeepers practice now is much more important as it used to be?
Sorry, what was it? Is goalkeeping practice more important now than it used to be?
Is goalkeeping footwork practice as important as it used to be?
Yeah, I'd say footwork in terms of like with the ball is definitely more important. I think if if you look at all the teams in the Premier League, they all want to play out from the back, like basically from when Man City have started doing it. And you see now like the two defenders stand right next to the goalkeeper, and it's all about passing and getting it back and things like that. So I think it's always been important, but I definitely think it's more important. So it's a good question. I think practicing with your left foot, your right foot, and being comfortable with the ball at your feet is obviously a massive part of being a goalkeeper. It's something that I've worked on a lot over the last few years, and obviously for me now training with the Newcastle players like Shelby and Fabian Shaw and people like that expect you to be able to be good with the ball at your feet. So it's something that I practice every day, and it's definitely a big part of being a goalkeeper.
Anyone else? Have we got any more questions? If you just want to unmute your microphone, I'll make sure I ask you. Oh, it's shite, nice. I'll ask one if nobody else has got any. Best player that you've played with and best player you've played against?
So best player I've played against was probably Coutinho for Liverpool. Obviously went to Barcelona for like 150 million or whatever that was. So obviously he was a fantastic player. Managed to save his penalty as well. So I'll always chuck Coutinho in there. And played with. Obviously, I've took a massive step up coming to Newcastle. So it would definitely be someone at Newcastle, probably like St. Maximin, just for pure ability, is some of the things he does in training with the ball. He's so fast, loads of skill, and he can finish as well. So probably St. Maximin, in terms of pure ability, is the best I've ever seen up close, like with training wise, and obviously played a few games with him.
Callum, did I see you go there?
Yeah. I was just wondering, like, how does a crowd actually affect you during the game? Like, obviously, this year I haven't been any, but in the past, like, how does it make you step up in the game, or can it be quite intimidating?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think definitely it has a big effect. I think it's one of the main things when you get into a first team. It obviously is different. It definitely makes you feel more nervous. And I think, but I enjoy it more as well. I think, like I said, obviously with playing for Newcastle, I've never played with a crowd, but I think it gives you an edge. It makes you concentrate more. And I personally, I prefer it with a crowd now that I've been a bit more experienced. But there's nothing like it when you walk out and the stadium's got 50,000 people in or whatever. I've played in stadiums like that a few times, and it's such a buzz you get. If you make a save or your team scores a goal or whatever, it's a fantastic feeling, and it's definitely the best thing about playing football. And obviously, the sooner we can have fans back in the stadiums, I think the better for everybody, because definitely the football's not the same without fans, and it definitely, for me, it's a great feeling playing in front of big stadiums and big fans. So it's definitely a highlight of being a footballer.
Jack?
If there was one thing in your career that you could change, what would it be?
Oh, it's a good question. Obviously, I'm pretty happy with things so far. But if there's one thing I could change, I would say, I suppose, just to see what would have happened if Newcastle hadn't released me. At 16, if they give me a few years to develop, I think if I could have stayed at Newcastle for a bit longer, who knows what could have happened. I could have maybe gone out on loan in 19, 20, 21 to someone like Carlisle, and who I might have been able to play for Newcastle at a younger age. My career might have gone in a different way. Obviously, I'm happy with how my career's gone, but I think looking back, that would have been interesting to see if that had changed my career in any shape or form. But you never know, it might have been a negative thing as well. So there's nothing too much I would change. Obviously, I've made mistakes and things like that, which is never a good thing. But I think that's part of being a goalkeeper. So I think it's unrealistic to say, I wish I never made this mistake or that mistake. I think that's just part of the course. So yeah, I think maybe if I'd stayed in Newcastle as a kid, who knows what else would have happened. So maybe it's that one.
I'll jump in with another one. So obviously you mentioned your dad was a goalkeeper. Other than your dad, which other goalkeepers did you look up to when you were coming through?
Well, obviously watching Newcastle, Shea Given, for definitely. Used to obviously watch him every week because I would go to the games. I would go early at St James Park. My dad, I would stand behind the goal watch them warm up and things like that, and watch just how fast they were, how strong they used to look. Obviously, when you're a young lad, and I would stand behind the goal, watch them warm up, and then obviously watch the games. So Shagan and Harper as well would always be the ones I would watch growing up. And then today, I would say like Alisson for Liverpool, Edison for Man City are probably the two best goalies for me in the league, in different ways. But I just really enjoy watching them two play. Alisson just makes everything look so easy, and just is so cool and calm. And obviously Edison is so explosive and fast, and really his distribution, like we were talking about, his ball of his feet and things like that is unbelievable. So when I was younger, it would be Shea Given, and obviously now it would be, I think, Alisson and Edison would be the two that I would look and watch and still try and learn from.
Brilliant. I've got two more, so we'll make these the last two. I've got Harry that wants to ask one, then I've got one that's just come through on the chat.
Yep.
So Harry, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah. What's the most important thing for a goalkeeper to do before a match?
Great question. Mine would be prepare properly, and what I mean by that is whatever it takes for you to be at your best, then you need to do. So whether that's an early night's sleep, whether that's eating the right food the night before a match, whether that's making sure you do a good warm-up. So obviously if your goalie coach warms you up, or I don't know, if another player warms you up, make sure you get everything you need. So I like to walk out on a match day knowing that every little thing I've done during that week is as much as I can do to make me have a good game, and then I know in my mind I can go and play. So it's just having like the preparation, like I say, whether it's making sure you eat the right food. There'll be little things you can learn of what's the best to eat, like 2 hours before, or 2 or 3 hours before kickoff, things like that, and obviously good night's sleep and things like that, so that you're the best you can be in a game. So that's what I would say.
Okay, yeah, cheers.
No problem.
Right, last one from Steve Brass. He's just asked on the chat, how do you deal with making mistakes during a game?
Yeah, it's a good one. I think it's something I've definitely got better at since I got older. I think when I was younger, I think a lot of people probably do struggle. Like you make a mistake and then that's all you can think about. So the rest of the game, sometimes you might not concentrate on what's actually happening, and one mistake might become 2 mistakes, might become 3 mistakes. That's sort of what happens. So I've spoke to like sports psychologists, and I've obviously learned myself as well that once you make a mistake, there's absolutely nothing you can do. You can't turn back the clock, and there's nothing you can do. So the only thing you can do is sort of put it at the back of your mind as best you can and actually focus on the rest of the game. So try and make up for it with a save, or just literally try and put it to the back of your mind and just play as if you haven't made that mistake. And then after the game and the day after the game, you can go back, watch the video and say, right, why have I made that mistake? What can I do better? Was it just a freak mistake that'll happen once in a while, which is obviously fine? Or is it something that I can actually improve? Is it a weakness in my game that I can improve? So I think just mentally, being a goalkeeper is absolutely huge of how strong you are mentally, and obviously putting everything at the back of your mind when you make a mistake and knowing that it can happen, and just moving on from it as quickly as possible in the game, because there's absolutely nothing you can do about it once it's happened, and all you can do is try and have the best game you can after the mistake has happened. Is the best way you can sort of put it right. So that's what I would say. But it's probably the biggest part of being a goalkeeper for me, or certainly one of the biggest parts, is dealing with mistakes, because they happen to absolutely everybody. So how you deal with them is massive, really.
Fantastic. Right, mate. That's I think that's us done. I know we've probably ran over a couple of minutes, so obviously I appreciate that time.
Yeah,
if I could just keep you for 30 seconds, just while everybody else leaves, and I'll just have a very, very quick chat.